What's up, everybody? On today's show, we know SEC teams added and lost guys this offseason, who upgraded their roster the best and who downgraded and did not replace with comparable players. We'll discuss it all. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We'll hit on some winners and losers of the transfer portal in the SEC. We got some recruiting news. We got SEC teams heading to Omaha, all that and more. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the right people faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we got plenty to jump into, but I want to start here as Brandon Marcello over at 24/7 Sports did a list of the SEC's biggest winners and losers in the 2024 transfer portal. And he did an interesting angle where he did an evaluation taking the average rating of the players leaving the program and compared it to the average rating of the players entering the program based on the 24/7 Sports transfer player ranking system. So by that metric, he lists Texas as the biggest winner of the SEC. Even though they lose 5 wide receivers from last year's team, they had a whole new core of guys that rate higher as a group with the likes of Alabama's Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, Matthew Golden, along with Bama tight end Amari Nyblack. They also added a stud edge rusher in UTSA's Trey Moore. And with 25 departures for Sark and just 11 newcomers, almost every one of those newcomers are high-level players expected to contribute immediately. So Texas gets a net rating game of 3.93. Again, stick with me here. They lost more guys than they brought in, but the guys they're bringing in are considered upgrades, better. Not across the table, right? I mean, you lose Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. It's not saying that these receivers are definitely going to be better than them, but at least on paper, Isaiah Bond, rates as a very highly rated player. So we shall see. Missouri, they come in number 2 on this list. They added offensive tackle Caden Green, Chris McClellan, Sterling Webb. They had Miami linebacker Corey Flagg, Georgia pass rusher Darius Smith. And the additions Mizzou added are very highly thought of. So they've got Mizzou at number 2, bringing in better talent than they lost. Tennessee, they also make the top 3, and adding Lance Hurd, the offensive tackle from LSU, Jamad McCoy, the corner from Oregon State, Chris Brazel, the Tulane wide receiver. Tennessee had 15 departures, 9 newcomers. Again, they rate those additions pretty high. Now, very interesting here. Ole Miss has kind of been the portal king, right? Everybody thinks very highly of all the pieces they added, and look, I'm with them. I like the pieces that they have brought in. Lane Kiffin's done a great job, but Ole Miss comes in 4th, and that's with the additions of Walter Nolan, Chris Paul Jr., Princely Amun-Mielon, Trey Amos, Yam Banks. However, the Rebels, they did lose 25 guys as well. They lose 25, they bring in 24, and so the net rating gain was actually less than those other 3 teams in the top 3. They're high on them, but I just thought some of the guys they lost kind of offsets. And so now we move to the bottom part of this list. And again, if you want to see the whole list, check it out, 247sports.com. Brandon Marcello does a good job. But at the bottom part of this list, the bottom 3, Marcello has Mississippi State at number 14 in the SEC. 25 roster departures, 19 additions. He said they lose their record-breaking quarterback in Will Rogers. You lose a starting left tackle in Percy Lewis. You lose running back Woody Marks. Now, they added pieces to replace those guys, but obviously not as highly thought of. I mean, Blake Shapen, a quarterback, is fine, but we're not going to confuse him with Will Rogers. Coming number 15 on the list, it's Vanderbilt. They add 2 new quarterbacks in Diego Pavia and Nate Johnson, but they do lose stud wide receiver Will Shepard, who was considered a 4-star transfer. They also lose D lineman Nate Clifton, wide receiver London Humphreys, linebacker Ethan Barr. So that's some good talent that Vanderbilt loses compared to what they bring in. And then dead last on this list, how about this? Don't overreact, Alabama fans, but at number 16, it's Alabama. And here's the overall thought. Bama lost 40 departures. They've brought in 15 newcomers so far. So their average net rating loss was minus 0.48. This is what Brandon Marcello writes. He said, no SEC school experienced more attrition in the portal than Alabama. And that wasn't a surprise after Nick Saban's shocking retirement. Though Kalen DeBoer owns the SEC's only negative net rating in the portal, he added several stars that will immediately help him. Well, let's face it, they lose the nation's number one player, defensive back Caleb Downs, to Ohio State. They also lose 4 of their top 6 receivers, including Isaiah Bond, who led 3 former tied receivers in the grouping. They did add back starting tackle Caden Proctor, so that helps. But when you just consider some of the talent that was lost, 5-star quarterback Julian Sand, 4-star corner Jameer Grimsley, Trey Amos, Des Ricks, 4-star running back Roydell Williams, Earl Little, Seth McLaughlin, Malik Benson, Ja'Cory Brooks. I mean, you could see where the ratings were so one-sided. Those are super talented players that Bama lost. And then they've added some nice talent, Jeremy Bernard and so on and so forth, Keon Sabb. It's just they're not, in the 24/7 metrics, not rated as high as the guys who left. It's not saying Bama's going to stink. It's not saying they're going to lose a ton of games. It's not saying they can't be really good still. It just means they lost a lot of talent this offseason. Now it's on Kalen DeBoer to coach up the guys who are there and make the most of what they've got. And the big one was they held on to Jalen Milroe. That is what keeps this season afloat, and certainly can put up some big numbers. Bama can get to the playoff, perhaps win the SEC. All that's on the table for them. But very interesting angle on rating. Again, it's exciting to get guys into the portal, but when you comp it with what you lost and the talent level, very interesting to see how that all shakes out. All right, a few other tidbits to hit on as we continue around the conference. Over at LSU, former 5-star recruit John Emery going to withdraw his name from the transfer portal and return to LSU for another season. It is an interesting process. The Louisiana native had visited UCLA and was expected to head to UCLA, but he is going to stick around one more year in Baton Rouge. He was originally a 2019 recruit that Ed Ogeron brought in, but he will join a backfield touted with 2023 4-star recruit Caleb Jackson, who will head into his sophomore season. The former walk-on Josh Williams is back, and John Emery will rejoin that group. But very productive at times, some highlight moments at LSU, and he's going to stick around. So it'll be interesting to see what he does there. Interesting note over at Alabama, former Washington quarterback Michael Penix, who, of course, played the last 2 seasons at Washington for Kalen DeBoer. He was on campus in Alabama this week, hanging out with his former head coach and making an appearance at Tuscaloosa, maybe helping Alabama out when it comes to recruiting. Though he never played it down for the Tide, hanging out with his former head coach, showing, hey, let me take some pictures of some recruits here, see if we can't help you land some guys. Penix was seen pictured with 4-star wideout Donovan Murph over the weekend, who is ranked as the number 34 wide receiver in the country, number 3 overall player from the state of South Carolina. So it's always interesting when stuff like that happens. Like, when a coach leaves and you love that player, do you go follow the coach and root for him at his new place? Do you still root for your alma mater? And hey, I'm a Washington guy through and through. It's kind of an interesting one there. And then, hey, how about over at Texas? After a favorable placing in the track and field NCAA championships, Texas Athletics secured their 3rd ever Learfield Directors Cup. It's the annual award given to the nation's best athletic department, and thanks to their Big 12 championship runs in sports like golf, softball, track and field, swimming and diving, men's tennis, football, Longhorns have been awarded the cup. It's 30th year of competition. Texas has now secured 3 of the last 4 Directors Cups, losing out on 4 in a row, and Stanford won it the previous year. The Cardinal had dominated the competition, winning 26 of 30 titles and winning 25 straight from 1995 to 2019. Florida won the first ever award and is the only other team to win aside from Texas and Stanford. But Longhorn softball team, they'll get some high praise for their involvement in helping secure this award. Not only did they finish second in the NCAA Women's College World Series, but they did knock off Stanford twice in the process. Texas got its best results from rowing and volleyball, the two sports they won national championships in. So it'll be interesting. Texas coming over to the SEC. I don't know if they're going to dominate in all these sports like they've been doing over there in the Big 12. Going to get a little bit tougher. But then again, maybe they'll help just the overall level of play in the SEC up it even more in all the other sports. Look, all we ever really talk about football, basketball, and baseball, but the other sports matter, and very interesting to see what Texas can do, bring high level of competition to those sports. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll get to some recruiting tidbits coming out of the weekend. More Locked On SEC here in just a sec. But first, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for that role. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs got the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional at LinkedIn Jobs. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. 2.5 million small businesses are already using LinkedIn for hiring. You can join them at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Like we said, terms and conditions apply. All right, we're along here, Locked On SEC. I want to remind you guys, for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, bringing you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we got to get into some recruiting news, so let's dive into it. We head over to Alabama first, as the Alabama Crimson Tide picked up a big-time prospect for the 2025 class on Saturday afternoon, landing a commitment from four-star corner Chuck McDonald, who picked Alabama over the likes of USC, Georgia, and Oregon. He is the number 76 overall player in the class of 2025, the number 9 corner in the country. He's also the number 7 player from the state of California. 6'1", 190 pounds, goes to Modern Day High School. A lot of talent has come out of there. So he was on campus in Tuscaloosa this past weekend and made his commitment. So keep an eye on Chuck McDonald in the future of the secondary there at Alabama. Meanwhile, over at Georgia, Sunday, they picked up 4-star defensive lineman Christian Garrett. Garrett said Georgia is the team he grew up following. It's a great feeling to be in the position he's in. He said, I committed to Georgia because they have everything I want in a program. It's the school I always wanted to play for. Give everybody else a chance, but Georgia's where I want to be. Some other schools finished high on his list: Clemson, Tennessee, Georgia Tech. Did just finish up his official visit to Athens and committed to Georgia on Sunday. So number 128 overall prospect, according to On3, the number 10 defensive lineman in the 2025 cycle. So some other tidbits when it comes to recruiting. One name to watch over at LSU is 5-star Jacksonville Mandarin wide receiver Jamie French. Backed off his claim that Texas leads in his recruitment. He is considering the Longhorns along with the likes of LSU, Ohio State, Tennessee, and visited Baton Rouge at the end of May. His next official visit will be to Miami coming up this week before he will finish off with Tennessee later this week and then Texas next week. Over Georgia, they're continuing to look like the team to beat, according to 24/7 Sports, with Illinois wide receiver Talon Taylor visited Athens on May 31st. and a lot of momentum building towards the Georgia Bulldogs. Again, a lot of these takeaways coming from the overtime 7 championships, 24/7 Sports, giving some tidbits away from the recruiting world. One name to keep an eye on, too, for over at Alabama is Santa Ana modern-day wide receiver Chris Henry. He's committed to Ohio State, but plans on visiting Oregon and LSU this summer. Alabama also making a push. He is locked in with the Buckeyes, but one to keep an eye on there. Another one for Missouri, keep an eye on 3-star corner Courtney Patterson, transferring to Jones High School in Orlando, Florida. He's 5'11", 170 pounds. He's got offers from ECU, Mississippi State, and Mizzou on that list. How about Fort Bend Marshall class of 2025 receiver Jacaden Ferguson being offered on both sides of the ball? Did mention that Arkansas, LSU, and Oklahoma are currently standing out. The former recruiting him as a defensive back, while Arkansas and Oklahoma are recruiting him as a wide receiver. He will be at Arkansas coming up on June 14th. So keep an eye on Jacaden Ferguson. And meanwhile, 4-star corner Chris Ewald is closing in on a commitment, sounding like it's going to come down to Miami and Georgia as his 2 finalists. Top 100 quarterback Deuce Knight remains committed to Notre Dame, but some folks saying keep an eye on Ole Miss. The dialogue between the Rebels and him remains consistent. Lane Kiffin going to be looking for some future quarterback depth there. And one more note, 5-star Duncanville wide receiver DeCorian Moore, he decommitted from LSU back a couple of weeks ago, but Moore tells 24/7 Sports when he decommitted that he would only be visiting Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, and had not considered a recommitment to LSU. Well, after further consideration, he returned to Baton Rouge for an official visit over the weekend, and he did say LSU is back in the race for sure. Keep an eye on that one. And I did see Kentucky also picking up a commitment over the weekend from offensive tackle Darren Stray, 6'6", true tackle prospect. So good get there for Mark Stoops and company. And we'll talk some more recruiting here in the next couple of weeks. We'll get on our recruiting insider, Brian Smith, and get the latest going on all around the conference. But figured pass some of those tidbits along to you, as a lot of recruiting visits going on right now. And, as we just saw Georgia and Alabama, some of them saying, hey, look, don't leave this campus without a commitment. And some of these kids are jumping all in, saying, all right, I'm committed. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC. We'll do a quick baseball roundup as a couple of SEC teams punch their tickets to Omaha, and a few more with a chance to do so today as well. Still more to come on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet on all of it over at FanDuel. And of course, right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from Finals MVP in the NBA to who's going to hit one out of the park in any of those MLB games. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can add a big win to your summer bucket list. And we've been telling you guys, you got a lot of the week 1 SEC opener betting lines up there right now, like LSU around a touchdown favorite over USC. All of that stuff is up there. Georgia heavy favorite over Clemson. If you want to get in on any of that action, again, it's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get signed up. Once you're signed up, if you've never signed up before, download the FanDuel app, and you can check that each and every day. It is FanDuel, and they are America's #1 sportsbook. All right, continue on here, Locked On SEC, and it's a fun time of year as a lot of SEC teams were in action over the weekend when it comes to the super regionals in baseball. So I want to recap some of that action from over the weekend. And we start for the 14th time in program history. The Florida Gators are headed to Omaha, the only school to send both baseball and softball teams to the College World Series this season. It's the Florida Gators. That's now 9 straight super regional victories for Florida. It's the longest streak since 1999. Michael Robertson delivering the huge hit in the bottom of the 13th on Sunday to walk it off, winning 11-10. It was an epic game with Clemson. I saw Jack Eglione nearly get into it with a Clemson hitter as they bumped while he was tagging him, but Florida nearly walked it off in the 9th, crushing one to dead center that was caught. Went to extra innings, and they got it done. And Kevin O'Sullivan's group is heading back to Omaha. Feels like they're just always there. Meanwhile, the Tennessee Vols, they needed 3 games to extinguish Evansville, but they did it in impressive fashion yesterday, taking them down 12-1. And the Vols are headed back to Omaha for the 3rd time in 4 seasons. Pitcher Xander Sechrist was lights out, 6 1/3 shutout innings as the Vols punched their ticket. Hit 7 dingers in yesterday's game. And Tony Vitello's crew, they are back in Omaha as the number 1 overall seed, and they are looking to take it home. It's been a long time since the number 1 seed won it all, but this Vols team is super loaded, super talented. If anybody can do it, they can. Other games, Georgia, they lost game 1 of their super regional to NC State 18-1 on Saturday. But then they bounced back Sunday to rout the Wolfpack 11-2. So we will get a definitive game 3 of that super regional today. So excited to see what Wes Johnson and the Georgia Bulldogs could do. If they can punch their ticket, that would be really cool. Florida State, Virginia, and North Carolina, they all punched their tickets already to Omaha. So congrats to those schools. Now, as of this recording, right now as we're recording this, Texas A&M leads Oregon 15-8 in the 8th inning. So if that score holds, which it's very likely to do, the Aggies will advance to Omaha. Caden Kent with the big blow, 7th inning grand slam. Awesome for that kid. And Aggies were losing big early on in Oregon. It didn't look like it was going to be as easy as it has become here. But Aggies, again, if they hang on, they're punching their ticket, and Jim Schlossnagel's just done a fantastic job with that program, getting them back to relevance. And they're already taken it to Omaha before. Going to be likely taking Aggies back to Omaha again. And also, as of this recording, the late night game up there in Lexington, Kentucky. Kentucky and Oregon State, as of right now in the 5th inning, tied 2-2. So if Kentucky loses this one, they will play a definitive game 3 tomorrow. It's first ever super regional. Kentucky's hosting in Lexington. So we'd love to see if the Wildcats can get it done there. But cool stuff. Couple SEC teams already punched their tickets. Like we said, Florida, Tennessee, looking like the A&M's about to, and then Georgia have a chance today, and see what happens with Kentucky if they do it as well. One more thing I wanted to touch on here as we wrap things up here on this episode of Locked On SEC. If you guys missed it, Texas football released some videos and pictures a couple of days ago with some of their football players coming onto campus and driving Lamborghinis. A lot of them getting into their cars with the doors open and showing it off to recruits. And I saw Josh Booty, former LSU quarterback, put out this thought. I just thought this was interesting. He tweeted out, he said, what Texas football did with the Lambos on campus to look sweet for recruits is what's killing college football. Coach Saban has to be thanking God this is in the rearview mirror for him. It's just kind of an interesting thought on, where we're headed with NIL and paying players and all this kind of stuff. And it's funny because a lot of this stuff used to be done in the dark, right? Like behind the scenes, $100 handshakes and all that. And, the movie Blue Chips, all this kind of stuff. It was all done in hush hush secrets, whispering and all this. And now it can all just be out there in the open. And now it becomes truly a story of the haves and have nots. And, truly many of the SEC teams and schools are haves, and they'll be able to flex their muscles. But it is an interesting topic of what will be the breaking point here. Like, will we get to a point where how much is too much, where we're flexing sports cars and all this on our campuses saying, come play here, you get this sports car. And, does everybody on the team get one? What about the softball team? What about the baseball team? We're sharing revenue, right? So I don't know. It will be an interesting topic moving forward, but certainly something that caught everybody's attention. Oh, they got Lambos. All the players are getting Lambos at Texas. Come play at Texas. Man, it's going to be very interesting to see where all this goes in the next couple of years. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back and check us out throughout this week. We'll be catching you up with more going on around the conference and getting ready as we count down the days to SEC Media Days with tons of football content still to go. The Phil Steele guide is hitting your newsstands this week, so be checking that out and bring you some tidbits from that as well. Hey, for your second listen, check out Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today, streaming for you 24/7 with all the top sports stories of the day. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys throughout this week.